Kai had always enjoyed the quiet of his space station cabin. Floating high above the outer rim of the galaxy, the station was his home and his responsibility. The walls were lined with screens showing the star systems he monitored, and the hum of the life support system filled the silence. He liked the solitude. It gave him time to think, to study the stars, and to feel connected to something bigger than himself. One evening, while Kai was organizing supplies for the next day's inspection, he heard a soft scratching at the cabin door. At first, he thought it was just a maintenance issue. The station was old, and doors sometimes made strange noises. But this scratching was deliberate, gentle, almost like someone was knocking politely. Kai walked over and opened the door. His eyes widened at the sight. There, standing on the threshold, was a small alien girl. She was no taller than a human child, but her presence was powerful. Her fur was silvery, almost shimmering in the soft lights of the cabin, and her eyes glowed amber with curiosity and caution. Pointed ears twitched as she scanned the room, and her tail flicked nervously behind her. Kai froze for a moment. He had seen many alien species through his work, but this one was unusual. She looked lost, almost frightened, and her breathing was shallow. "Hello," Kai said softly, stepping closer but keeping his hands visible. "Are you okay?" The girl tilted her head, studying him. She made a sound Kai could not identify. It was a soft, melodic whine, like a cross between a hum and a sigh. She did not speak any words he recognized, but her expression was clear. She was cold and in need of comfort. Kai looked around the cabin. His first thought was that she might be injured, but she did not have visible wounds. Her fur seemed clean, and she moved gracefully despite her small size. Then he noticed how thin she looked, and the way her amber eyes flicked toward the ventilation panel suggested she had traveled a long distance. Without thinking, Kai moved to his sleeping area and pulled out his blanket. It was thick and warm, meant for the long, cold nights on the station. He held it out toward the girl. "Here, you can use this," he said gently. The girl's ears twitched at the gesture. She hesitated, looking at him as if she were deciding whether to trust him. Then, with a swift motion, she stepped forward and curled up in the blanket. Her small body fit perfectly into the folds, and she pressed her nose against the soft fabric. Kai watched quietly. She relaxed almost immediately, letting out a soft sigh. Kai felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had never been particularly good with children or creatures, but this small alien had managed to break through his calm exterior. He smiled, even though he knew she might not understand the gesture. For the rest of the night, Kai stayed nearby, reading the station's reports on his tablet while keeping an eye on her. Every so often, she would lift her head and look at him with her glowing eyes, as if checking that he was still there. Kai realized he did not mind her watching him. In fact, it made him feel less alone in the vastness of space. The next morning, Kai awoke to the sound of small paws moving across the cabin floor. He turned over and saw the alien girl sitting near the blanket, her ears twitching as she listened to the sounds of the station. She had moved closer to his side of the cabin and seemed curious about everything. Kai got up and stretched. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" The girl tilted her head again and made a low humming sound. She stood up and approached him, brushing against his legs with her fur. Kai laughed softly. He had not expected this level of affection so soon, but it was clear she was comfortable with him. Kai decided he needed to understand more about her. He knelt down to her level and held out his hand. "Do you have a name?" he asked. The girl paused. Then she spoke a word, soft but clear, that Kai could barely pronounce. Nira, she said. Nira, Kai repeated. That is a nice name. Nira tilted her head and let out a small sound that Kai took as agreement. He noticed that she moved with careful grace, her eyes constantly scanning the room. It was clear she was alert and intelligent. Kai spent the day showing Nira around the cabin. He demonstrated how to use the water dispenser, where to find food, and how the gravity controls worked. Nira watched everything with fascination, occasionally touching objects with delicate fingers covered in soft fur. She seemed particularly interested in the blanket. Every time Kai moved it or touched it, she would nuzzle it affectionately. By evening, Kai realized something important. Nira was not just a lost alien girl. She was forming a bond with him, and that bond seemed connected to the blanket. He had given it to her as a gesture of kindness, but she had taken it as something more significant. Kai sat near her and stroked the fur on her head. Nira leaned into his hand, closing her eyes. Kai could feel her calmness spreading to him. In that moment, he understood that the simple act of sharing something personal had created trust between them. As night fell, Kai watched the stars from the window. He thought about the journey that had brought Nira to his cabin. He wondered what her world was like, why she had come so far, and what challenges she had faced along the way. But more than that, he thought about the small connection they had made. In the vast emptiness of space, a simple blanket had become a bridge between two beings from completely different worlds. Kai smiled as he lay down near Nira, careful not to disturb her. He felt a quiet hope that, whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. In the darkness of the cabin, the hum of the station and the warmth of the shared blanket were enough. Nira shifted slightly, curling closer, and Kai felt a sense of peace he had not known in a long time. The galaxy outside was still enormous and unpredictable, but for the first night, everything felt safe and right. Kai drifted off to sleep, knowing that Nira was not just a guest. She was a companion, and somehow, the blanket had become the symbol of a new beginning for both of them. Kai woke to the sound of soft movement in his cabin. Nira was already awake, her small ember eyes watching him as he stirred from sleep. She had shifted closer during the night, her silvery fur brushing against his arm. Kai smiled, realizing that the blanket had become more than just warmth for her. It was a place of comfort, safety, and now companionship. He got up and stretched, careful not to startle her. Nira tilted her head and made a soft, melodic hum. She seemed to be studying his every movement. Kai noticed that she had a habit of observing quietly before acting. This made him think that she was much smarter than a normal child, and perhaps she understood more about her surroundings than he first realized. Kai went to the small kitchen area and started preparing breakfast. Nira followed him, moving gracefully across the floor. Every so often, she would stop and sniff the air, her ears twitching at sounds he could barely hear. Kai found it fascinating. Her senses were sharper than his, and she reacted to the smallest details around the station. "Are you hungry?" Kai asked. He offered her a small portion of the food he had prepared. Nira hesitated for a moment, then sniffed the dish before taking a few bites. She ate carefully, as if she was learning about human food. Her tail flicked slightly when she finished, and she looked up at him as if to say thank you. Kai laughed softly. "You are welcome," he said. "You need to eat well if you want to stay strong." After breakfast, Kai began his routine checks of the station. Nira followed him closely, watching his every move. She was curious about everything: the blinking lights, the control panels, and the tubes carrying water and air. When Kai paused to inspect a panel, Nero would mimic his actions, touching the screens and pressing buttons carefully. He realized she was learning quickly. During the afternoon, Kai noticed something unusual. Nira had started bringing the blanket with her wherever she went. If he moved it to a chair, she would drag it back to her corner. She even placed it in positions that seemed deliberate, as if she were marking a safe space. Kai remembered stories from his studies about alien species forming special attachments to personal items. It seemed Nero was doing the same, but with a strong sense of ownership. "Are you protecting this?" Kai asked, pointing at the blanket. Nira tilted her head and made a soft growl. It was not an angry growl but a warning, a signal that the blanket was important to her. Kai nodded slowly, understanding that he had to respect her bond. The next few hours passed with Kai working on maintenance tasks while Nira stayed close to the blanket. Sometimes, she would nuzzle it affectionately, circling it in a small ritualistic way that made Kai smile. He did not fully understand the meaning of her behavior, but he guessed it was a form of trust. She had chosen him and the blanket as her safe space. As evening approached, Kai decided to take a break and sit near the window. The stars outside were bright, and the space station floated silently among them. Nira jumped onto the chair beside him, dragging the blanket along. She curled up next to him, pressing her body lightly against his arm. Kai felt a warmth that was not just physical. It was emotional, a connection that had grown from simple kindness. "You really like this blanket, don't you?" Kai asked softly. Nira tilted her head, blinking slowly. Then she made a small sound, like a happy sigh. Kai laughed. "I think you feel safe here," he said. "That's good. You should feel safe." Over the next days, Kai noticed more of Nira's strange habits. She would circle the blanket 3 times before lying down, sometimes pawing it gently as if arranging it perfectly. She would sniff him when he approached and make small humming noises. When other small objects moved near the blanket, she would growl softly to keep them away. Kai realized that the blanket had become more than comfort, it had become a part of her routine and her understanding of safety. Kai decided to try communicating more with her. He spoke gently, asking questions and pointing to different parts of the cabin. Nira responded in small ways, using gestures and soft noises. Sometimes, she mimicked his movements exactly, tilting her head or placing her hands on objects the way he did. Kai realized she was intelligent and learning quickly. Her reactions were not instinctive alone, she was observing and understanding. One afternoon, as Kai was repairing a small panel, Nira suddenly froze. Her ears perked, and her tail stiffened. She let out a low, warning growl. Kai paused and looked around. He could not hear anything unusual, but Nira's senses were sharper. He trusted her instincts. A few moments later, a small spark flew from the panel Kai was fixing. Nira jumped back immediately, her body tense and ready. Kai laughed quietly, relieved. "You saved me from a small accident," he said. Nira tilted her head, seemingly pleased that her warning had helped. That night, Kai prepared the cabin for rest. He placed the blanket in Nira's corner, letting her arrange it as she liked. Nira curled up carefully, her glowing eyes watching him as he settled in nearby. She occasionally pawed at the blanket, making small adjustments to make it more comfortable. Kai realized that this simple routine had created a strong sense of trust and understanding between them. As Kai lay down, he reflected on the past few days. Nira had come into his life unexpectedly, but she had already changed it. The blanket had become a symbol of their bond, a shared space that represented trust, safety, and companionship. Kai felt grateful that something so simple could form a connection so strong, even between two beings from completely different worlds. He reached over and stroked her soft fur. Nero leaned into his hand, closing her eyes. The glow of her ember eyes dimmed as she relaxed completely, trusting him completely for the first time. Kai smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had not known for a long time. For the first time in weeks, the vastness of space did not feel lonely. With Nero by his side, the hum of the station, and the warmth of the blanket, Kai felt a bond that could grow stronger every day. He knew that there were challenges ahead, but he also knew that they would face them together. As the lights of the cabin dimmed, Kai drifted into sleep with Nero close to him. Her soft breathing and the gentle rustle of the blanket reminded him that even in the endless expanse of space, trust and friendship could create a home. And so, the first real connection between human and alien werewolf began, a bond that started simply with a shared blanket but promised to grow into something much greater. The next morning, Kai awoke to the sound of quiet movement. Nero was already awake, her ember eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the cabin. She had rearranged the blanket overnight, placing it neatly in a corner near her little sleeping area. Kai noticed that she had circled it 3 times before settling down, just as she had done the previous days. Her attachment to the blanket was growing stronger with every passing hour. Kai got out of bed and approached her carefully. "Good morning, Nira," he said softly. She tilted her head and made a small humming sound, as if answering him. He smiled, realizing that she was learning to respond to his voice and tone. It was remarkable how quickly she was adapting to the new environment. He prepared breakfast while keeping an eye on her. Nira followed him around the cabin, watching his movements with keen interest. Every so often, she would paw gently at the blanket, adjusting it slightly. It was clear that this small item had become her personal space, her sanctuary. Kai wondered if it was more than just comfort for her, perhaps it was a symbol of trust and safety. After breakfast, Kai decided to check the station's external sensors. He needed to monitor the nearby asteroid field for any debris that could affect the station. Nira followed him to the control panel, standing on tiptoe to see the screens. She reached out with her small, furry hands and touched the controls lightly. Kai watched her carefully, making sure she did not press any dangerous buttons. She seemed to understand the basics immediately, her curiosity guided by intelligence and observation rather than random touch. As Kai adjusted the sensors, he noticed Nira sniffing the air and listening intently. Her ears twitched toward every sound, from the soft hum of the station's engines to the faint vibrations from the solar panels outside. He realized that her senses were far sharper than his own. She was aware of things he could not detect, and her reactions were almost instinctive but clearly intelligent. Later, as he continued his work, Kai noticed something unusual. Nira had moved the blanket again, placing it directly beneath the main console. She sat on it, looking up at him with her glowing eyes. When he tried to reach for the blanket to continue his work, she let out a soft growl. It was not aggressive, but it was a warning. Kai paused and nodded, understanding that the blanket had become more than comfort, it had become a point of ownership for her. Kai leaned down to speak to her. "I understand, Nira," he said. "You want it to stay here. That is fine. We can work around it." She tilted her head and hummed softly, as if approving his decision. Kai smiled, realizing that they were beginning to communicate in ways beyond words. Their bond was growing through gestures, tone, and shared understanding. During the afternoon, Kai noticed more of Nira's unique habits. She would circle the blanket a few times before lying down, then place her paws over it and nuzzle it with her nose. Occasionally, she would look up at him, her eyes glowing warmly, as if seeking approval. She seemed to be performing a ritual of care, not just for the blanket, but for the connection it represented. Kai sat nearby and observed her carefully. He had studied many alien species in the past, but this behavior was different. It was not instinct alone. Nira was intelligent, aware of her actions, and forming a clear bond with him. He realized that the blanket was a bridge between them, a shared space that allowed her to express trust and affection. That evening, Kai decided to try something new. He picked up the blanket and gently shook it before placing it near Nira's corner. She immediately perked up, circling it 3 times before lying down. Then she nuzzled it and let out a small, content hum. Kai laughed softly. "You really care about this blanket," he said. "I think it makes you feel safe." Nira blinked at him, then leaned closer, brushing her fur against his arm. Kai felt a warmth that was more than physical. It was emotional, a connection that had grown from a simple gesture of kindness. He realized that, in a small way, they had formed a partnership. She trusted him, and he trusted her. As the night fell, Kai prepared for rest. He placed the blanket in Nira's preferred corner and sat beside her. She curled up carefully, pressing her small body against the blanket. Kai watched her, noting every small movement, every tiny gesture of care. Her attachment to the blanket was more than he had expected. It was clear that she had a deep understanding of trust and safety, even if she did not yet fully understand human customs. Kai reached over and stroked her soft fur. Nira leaned into his hand, closing her eyes. The glow of her ember eyes dimmed as she relaxed completely. Kai smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had not known for a long time. The blanket had started as a simple act of kindness, but it had grown into a symbol of connection and trust. In the quiet of the cabin, Kai thought about the days ahead. He knew that caring for Nira would require patience, understanding, and attention. But he also realized that their bond was stronger than he had anticipated. She had shown intelligence, loyalty, and affection in ways that were remarkable for a being from a completely different world. Kai lay down near her, careful not to disturb her rest. The hum of the station and the warmth of the blanket created a sense of calm. Nira shifted slightly, curling closer, and Kai felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that he had earned her trust. The vastness of space no longer felt lonely. With Nira by his side, he felt connected, safe, and understood. As sleep overtook him, Kai reflected on the strange and unexpected turn his life had taken. A simple blanket had become the beginning of a bond that could grow into something extraordinary. Nira's presence was a reminder that trust and connection could transcend species, distance, and differences. Kai knew that the days ahead would bring challenges. He had no idea why Nira had traveled so far, or what dangers might lie outside the station. But he also knew that, with her loyalty and intelligence, they would face those challenges together. The blanket was more than fabric. It was a shared space, a starting point for friendship, understanding, and perhaps something even deeper. In the quiet of the night, the cabin felt alive. Nira's soft breathing, the gentle rustle of the blanket, and the hum of the station created a rhythm that Kai found comforting. For the first time, he realized that companionship could appear in unexpected forms. He closed his eyes, letting the peace of the moment wash over him, knowing that tomorrow would bring new experiences, new lessons, and new ways to deepen the bond between human and alien. And so, Another day passed on the station, filled with curiosity, understanding, and the quiet strength of a growing friendship. Nira's attachment to the blanket had become a part of their lives, a symbol of trust, comfort, and connection that neither of them would ever forget. The next morning, Kai awoke to find Nira already alert and waiting by the blanket. Her ember eyes glowed softly as she adjusted the folds of the fabric. Kai watched quietly, realizing that her behavior had grown more deliberate. She was not only attached to the blanket but also seemed to be arranging it with a purpose. "Good morning, Nira," Kai said softly. She tilted her head and hummed in response. The small noises she made were gentle and melodic, like soft whispers. Kai realized that even without words, she was communicating. Her gestures, hums, and movements carried meaning, and he was beginning to understand them. Kai prepared breakfast while keeping an eye on Nira. She followed him around, occasionally stopping to nuzzle the blanket or paw at it. She would then look up at him, her glowing eyes studying his reactions. Kai smiled. It was clear she sought approval, a subtle sign that her attachment to the blanket was more than habit, it was meaningful to her. After breakfast, Kai decided to work on the station's environmental systems. Nira followed him to the control room, carrying the blanket along. She placed it carefully in her preferred spot and sat on it, watching him. Every so often, she circled it 3 times, a ritual Kai had noticed before. This time, however, she paused to make small, deliberate gestures around the blanket, pawing it gently, tapping it, and then pressing her nose against it. Kai knelt to watch her more closely. He realized that these actions were not random. Nira seemed to be performing a form of cultural ritual, one that he did not fully understand. It reminded him of old research he had read about alien species using personal items to mark territory or form bonds. The blanket, simple as it was, had become a central point in her understanding of safety, trust, and companionship. "Do you think this makes you feel safe?" Kai asked softly. Nira looked up at him, her ears twitching, and let out a low, approving hum. She then returned her attention to the blanket, gently pressing her paws against it. Kai realized that she was creating a space she considered secure, and he was honored to be included in that trust. Throughout the day, Kai observed more subtle signs of Nira's habits. She would circle the blanket before sitting, place her paws in a specific position, and occasionally nuzzle him after adjusting it. These gestures were small, but they had a rhythm and consistency that suggested deeper meaning. Kai felt a mixture of fascination and admiration. The connection between them was growing, and he was learning more about her than he had expected. During a mid-afternoon maintenance check, Nira suddenly froze. Her ears twitched sharply, and her tail stiffened. She let out a low, warning growl. Kai paused and scanned the room. Nothing seemed unusual, but he trusted her instincts. A few moments later, a small panel emitted a faint spark. Kai stepped back quickly, avoiding the electrical discharge. Nira stayed alert, eyes scanning, ready to warn him again if necessary. Kai laughed softly. "You are more alert than I am," he said. She tilted her head, and a small hum of satisfaction escaped her. It was clear that she understood her role as protector, even in subtle ways. That evening, Kai decided to spend more time observing her behaviors around the blanket. He noticed that Nira began arranging the fabric in patterns that were unfamiliar to him. She seemed to be marking specific areas for herself, creating boundaries and safe zones. Every so often, she would look at him, as if inviting him to recognize her efforts. Kai reached over and gently stroked her soft fur. Nira leaned into his hand, closing her eyes in contentment. It was a quiet, shared moment that reinforced their bond. The blanket had become more than comfort, it was a symbol of trust, understanding, and companionship. Kai realized that in her way, Nira was inviting him to be part of her world, to respect her rituals and habits. As night approached, the space station's artificial lights dimmed. Kai prepared the cabin for rest. He placed the blanket in Nira's preferred corner, letting her arrange it as she wished. She circled it 3 times, adjusted it, and then settled down, pressing her small body against the fabric. Kai lay nearby, careful not to disturb her. He watched her for a while, noting every movement, every subtle gesture. Nira's attachment to the blanket was clearly more than physical comfort. It was emotional and cultural, a bridge between her world and his. He understood that in her species, sharing personal items could signify trust, loyalty, and even partnership. The blanket was no longer just fabric, it was a bond they both shared. Kai reflected on the events of the day. Nira's presence had transformed the cabin. The simple routines, the quiet interactions, and the shared trust had created a sense of companionship he had not experienced in years. He realized that caring for her required patience, attention, and respect, but the rewards were extraordinary. As he reached for his own rest area, Kai felt a sense of wonder. Nira had arrived unexpectedly, and a simple blanket had become the center of their connection. Her rituals, instincts, and intelligence had turned a small act of kindness into a meaningful relationship. He understood that he was learning as much from her as she was from him. Kai lay down near her, the warmth of the blanket and her soft breathing creating a rhythm of comfort. Nira shifted slightly, pressing closer, and Kai felt a sense of peace. He realized that in the vast emptiness of space, companionship could appear in unexpected forms. Trust, care, and understanding could bridge worlds, species, and experiences. As he drifted toward sleep, Kai thought about the future. He did not know why Nira had traveled so far, or what challenges lay ahead. But he knew that their bond, rooted in simple gestures and mutual respect, would help them face whatever came next. The blanket was more than a physical object, it was a symbol of connection, loyalty, and the beginning of a partnership that could grow stronger every day. In the quiet of the cabin, the soft hum of the station, the gentle rustle of the blanket, and Nira's relaxed presence filled the space with life. Kai felt grateful for the unexpected friendship, understanding that even in the cold expanse of space, trust and care could create warmth and safety. Nira's small, deliberate gestures around the blanket, her attentive eyes, and her affectionate hums reminded Kai that connections could transcend species and distance. They had begun a journey of understanding, mutual respect, and companionship. He realized that the small routines and shared spaces were the foundation of something extraordinary. Kai closed his eyes, letting the comfort of the moment settle over him. The day had shown him that the bond with Nira was growing deeper, built on trust, attention, and shared experiences. He felt a quiet hope that this connection would continue to strengthen, guiding them through the challenges of the space station and beyond. And so, as the stars twinkled outside and the station floated silently among them, Kai and Nira rested together. The blanket, once a simple gesture of kindness, had become a symbol of safety, trust, and understanding, a shared space that marked the beginning of a remarkable friendship between human and alien werewolf. Kai woke to the sound of soft, low growls. Nira was already awake, her body tense and her ember eyes scanning the cabin. She was standing on the blanket, her small frame poised as if ready to defend something. Kai sat up slowly, careful not to startle her. "Nira, what is it?" he asked softly. She tilted her head and let out a low hum, then sniffed the air. Kai followed her gaze toward the cabin door and noticed a faint vibration running through the floor. He could not identify it immediately, but Nira's reaction was clear. She sensed danger. Kai moved closer to the control panel and checked the external sensors. A small object was approaching the station at high speed. It was not a normal asteroid, it moved with intent. Kai frowned. "We might have a problem," he said. Nira growled softly, circling the blanket and pressing her body against it. The blanket had become a central part of her vigilance. Kai realized that Nira's instincts were alerting him before the sensors even detected the full threat. Her senses were sharper than any technology on the station. He had grown to trust her judgment in these past days. He activated the station's defensive systems while keeping one eye on Nira. She remained close to the blanket, occasionally glancing up at him, as if ensuring he was safe. Her small body radiated energy and focus. Kai admired her loyalty and intelligence. Even though she was small and young by human standards, her abilities were extraordinary. The object grew closer. It was a rogue alien predator, one Kai had read about in reports but never expected to encounter here. Its movements were calculated, and it seemed to be scanning the station. Kai's heart raced, but he kept his focus. "Nira, stay close," he said. She hummed softly and crouched near the blanket, ready to move at a moment's notice. Kai appreciated how she had integrated her protective instincts with her attachment to the blanket. It was not just a symbol of comfort for her, it had become a base of operations, a place from which she could guard and act. As the predator approached, Kai maneuvered the station's defense drones. Nira's eyes glowed as she watched the screens, her body tense. She seemed to understand what Kai was doing, and her growls grew louder as the predator got closer. At one point, she leapt from the blanket, landing gracefully on the floor beside him, her claws clicking softly. She was ready to act if needed. Kai's hands moved quickly over the controls. The drones moved into position, forming a protective barrier around the station. Nira's growls synchronized with his actions, almost as if they were working together instinctively. Kai realized that their bond, formed over small gestures and trust, had grown into teamwork. The predator struck suddenly, moving faster than Kai expected. One of the drones intercepted it, firing pulses that made it hesitate. Nira leapt onto the console, her small frame agile and precise. She hissed and bared her sharp teeth, a warning to the creature. The predator paused, sensing her presence. Kai marveled at her courage. Despite her small size, Nira's instincts were formidable. Her enhanced senses allowed her to anticipate the predator's moves. She circled the blanket once, then crouched low, ready to spring. Kai realized that the blanket had become her command center. From it, she monitored the situation and responded with precision. Kai adjusted the drone's positions, giving Nira room to act. She moved swiftly, placing herself between the blanket and the threat. Her growls intensified, and she bared her teeth. The predator hesitated, unsure how to approach. Kai smiled, realizing that Nira's presence alone was deterring it. The standoff lasted only a few moments, but it felt much longer. Kai focused on the controls, keeping the predator at bay while Nira maintained her vigilant stance. Together, they formed a seamless defense. The bond that had grown from something as simple as a blanket now played a critical role in their survival. Finally, the predator retreated, moving away from the station with cautious steps. Nira watched it leave, her body slowly relaxing. She returned to the blanket, circling it 3 times before lying down and pressing her head against it. Kai watched, impressed by her composure. "You were amazing, Nira," Kai said softly. She lifted her head and made a small hum, acknowledging his praise. Kai realized that she had not only protected the blanket but had also acted to keep him safe. Their connection had become a partnership built on trust, instinct, and mutual care. Kai spent the rest of the evening checking the station for any damage. Nira remained close to the blanket, occasionally glancing up at him to ensure he was safe. He admired how she had integrated her protective instincts with her affection for the blanket. It was more than a piece of fabric, it was a symbol of their bond, a place from which she could act with confidence. As night fell, Kai prepared the cabin for rest. He placed the blanket in Nira's corner and let her arrange it as she wished. She circled it 3 times, pawing it gently, then settled down, pressing her body against it. Kai lay nearby, feeling a sense of peace and gratitude. He realized that their bond had grown stronger through the day's challenges. Nira's instincts, courage, and loyalty had not only kept them safe but had deepened the connection they shared. The blanket, once a simple gesture of comfort, had become central to her identity and her sense of security. Kai reached over and stroked her soft fur. She leaned into his hand, closing her eyes in contentment. The glow of her ember eyes dimmed as she relaxed completely. Kai smiled, knowing that he had earned her trust and that she trusted him fully in return. In the quiet of the cabin, Kai reflected on the events of the day. Nira had come into his life unexpectedly, and their bond had grown from small gestures of kindness into something extraordinary. The blanket had been the beginning, but their teamwork, understanding, and mutual care had turned it into a symbol of connection and trust. Kai knew that challenges would continue to arise. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and danger could come at any moment. But he also knew that with Nira by his side, they could face anything. Her loyalty, intelligence, and instincts complemented his skills, and together they had formed a partnership stronger than either could achieve alone. As he drifted toward sleep, Kai felt a quiet satisfaction. The day had tested them, and they had succeeded together. Nira's presence, the blanket, and the small routines they shared had created a bond that was resilient, meaningful, and unique. Outside, the stars twinkled in the endless expanse of space. Inside, the cabin was filled with warmth, trust, and companionship. Kai and Nira rested together, connected by more than just proximity. The blanket, once a simple gift, had become the foundation of a remarkable friendship and partnership, one that promised to grow stronger with each passing day. And so, as the station floated silently among the stars, Kai and Nira slept peacefully. Their bond, forged through trust, courage, and shared care, had become unbreakable. The blanket remained at the center, a symbol of safety, connection, and the beginning of an extraordinary journey between human and alien werewolf. The morning light filtered softly into the cabin, and Kai stirred from sleep to find Nira already awake. Her ember eyes glowed with curiosity and alertness. She had arranged the blanket carefully in her corner, circling it twice before settling near it. Kai noticed that she seemed even more deliberate in her movements than before. The blanket had become central to her daily routines and perhaps to her sense of belonging. "Good morning, Nira," Kai said softly. She tilted her head and let out a gentle hum. It was her way of greeting him, and Kai had come to appreciate these small interactions. They were part of a growing language of gestures and sounds that they shared. Kai prepared breakfast while Nira followed him around. She would occasionally paw at the blanket or nuzzle it before looking back at him. Kai smiled. He realized that her attachment to the blanket was not just about comfort, it was a symbol of trust and security. She seemed to be communicating to him that this space, and by extension him, was safe. After breakfast, Kai decided to review the station's supply logs. Nira sat nearby, watching his movements carefully. Every so often, she would circle the blanket, adjusting it slightly. Her gestures were precise, almost ritualistic. Kai leaned back in his chair and observed her. He wondered if these behaviors were part of her alien culture. Perhaps the blanket represented more than just warmth and comfort, perhaps it was a connection, a shared space that marked the beginning of a bond deeper than he had realized. During the afternoon, Kai noticed something new. Nero began placing small items near the blanket. She arranged small tools, a tablet, and even a bottle of water in a neat circle around it. When Kai asked her what she was doing, she tilted her head and made a low, melodic hum. He realized she was creating a kind of safe zone, a ritual space that was her way of marking trust and ownership. The blanket had become the center of that zone. Kai knelt beside her. "This is your space, isn't it?" he asked. Nira blinked slowly and pressed her nose against the blanket. Her eyes glowed softly as she looked up at him. Kai smiled. He understood that she was inviting him to respect her routines and share in the trust she was showing. As the day went on, Kai observed more subtle behaviors. Nero would circle the blanket before moving to any activity, gently pawing it and sometimes letting out a soft hum. She seemed to check the blanket before making any other decision. If Kai approached too quickly, she would step forward to guide him gently, reminding him of her space. He realized that her attachment was not possessive in a selfish way but protective, a way of maintaining trust between them. Later, as Kai worked on repairs in the station, Nira remained near the blanket. She occasionally looked up at him, her ears twitching at every sound. Her senses were sharper than his own, and she seemed to understand the station's rhythm intuitively. Kai found it remarkable how quickly she had adapted to the environment. Suddenly, Nira froze. Her tail stiffened, and her ears perked sharply. She let out a low growl, then darted toward the cabin door, moving with precise speed and grace. Kai followed, curious and cautious. Nira stopped at the window, her glowing eyes fixed on a small object moving in the distance. It was a rogue drone from another sector, moving unpredictably near the station. Kai quickly assessed the situation. "I see it," he said. "We need to handle this carefully." Nira's growls grew louder, and she leapt onto the blanket, then circled it twice before settling in a crouched position. Her stance was ready, protective, and focused. Kai realized that for her, the blanket was not only a symbol of trust but a command center from which she could monitor and act. Kai activated the station's defense systems while keeping an eye on Nira. She moved with him instinctively, her attention sharp and her movements deliberate. When a warning light flashed, she leapt onto the console and tapped it gently with her paw, almost as if signaling that she understood the situation. Kai could not help but marvel at her intelligence. The rogue drone approached faster, but Nira remained composed. She hissed softly, circling the blanket once before crouching again. Her behavior seemed ritualistic yet practical, blending instinct with awareness. Kai adjusted the defense systems to intercept the drone while Nira maintained her watch over the cabin and the blanket. Together, they created a seamless defense. The drone finally altered its path, avoiding the station and retreating into space. Nira relaxed slightly but remained close to the blanket, pawing it gently and letting out a soft hum. Kai patted her head, smiling. "You were incredible," he said. She tilted her head in acknowledgement, pressing her body gently against the blanket once more. As night fell, Kai prepared the cabin for rest. He allowed Nira to arrange the blanket exactly as she wished, noticing the care and thought she put into each adjustment. She circled it 3 times, nudged it with her nose, and then lay down, curling up near it. Kai lay down beside her, careful not to disturb her rituals. He watched her for a while, noting the subtleties of her behavior. The blanket was no longer just a piece of comfort, it was a symbol of trust, protection, and connection. Through this simple object, Nira was teaching him about her world, her instincts, and her ways of forming bonds. Kai felt honored to be part of this process. As he drifted to sleep, Kai reflected on the day. Nira's behaviors, her protective instincts, and her attachment to the blanket had deepened the connection between them. He realized that trust could take many forms and that understanding another being required patience, observation, and empathy. The blanket had started as a simple gesture but had become the foundation of something extraordinary. Kai reached over and stroked Nira's soft fur. She leaned into his hand, closing her eyes, and hummed softly. The gentle sound and the warmth of her small body created a sense of peace he had not known in years. Outside, the stars twinkled in the silent expanse of space, but inside the cabin, trust, connection, and companionship filled every corner. In the quiet of the night, Kai understood something important. The bond between him and Nira was growing deeper, not just because of proximity or care but because of respect and understanding. The blanket had become a shared space, a symbol of their trust, and a foundation for a partnership that could face any challenge. Tomorrow would bring new routines, new lessons, and perhaps new dangers, but Kai felt confident. With Nira by his side, he had both protection and companionship. Her intelligence, loyalty, and instincts complemented his skills, and together they had formed a bond that could grow stronger every day. And so, as the station floated silently among the stars, Kai and Nira rested. The blanket, carefully arranged and gently nuzzled, remained the center of their shared trust and connection. Through it, a human and an alien werewolf had formed a bond that promised to last, a friendship built on patience, understanding, and care. The morning sun filtered softly through the cabin window. Kai stretched and looked over at Nira, who was already awake. She was perched beside the blanket, her ember eyes glowing softly. She had arranged the blanket in a neat pile, circling it twice before settling close. Kai smiled, realizing that her rituals had become even more precise. The blanket was no longer just comfort, it was a symbol of their bond. "Good morning, Nira," Kai said softly. She tilted her head and let out a low hum, acknowledging him. He watched her closely, noticing how she seemed more confident and at ease in the cabin. The routines they had shared had created a rhythm of trust and understanding between them. After breakfast, Kai decided to check the station's external sensors. Nira followed him, carrying the blanket carefully with her paws. She placed it in her usual corner, circling it 3 times before crouching near it. Kai watched, impressed by how deliberate her movements were. The blanket was central to her sense of security, and he respected that deeply. As Kai worked, Nira's ears twitched constantly. Her ember eyes scanned the cabin and the nearby sensors. Suddenly, she froze, her tail stiffening, and let out a low, warning growl. Kai looked up at the sensors and saw movement approaching the station. A small ship was coming closer, and its trajectory seemed unpredictable. Kai's heart raced. "Nira, stay near the blanket," he said. She hummed softly, crouching low, ready to act. Kai quickly assessed the situation. The ship did not seem hostile at first glance, but its movement was erratic, and it could collide with the station if not monitored carefully. Nira's instincts were sharper than any sensor. She circled the blanket once, then crouched low, her gaze fixed on the incoming ship. Kai realized that she trusted the blanket as a point of observation, a command center from which she could assess danger. Her intelligence and instincts were extraordinary, and he felt fortunate to have her by his side. As the ship approached, Kai activated the station's defense systems. Nira moved with him instinctively, her body low and ready. She circled the blanket again, making soft growls and huffs as if signaling her assessment. Kai adjusted the drones to create a protective barrier while keeping an eye on Nira. Together, they formed a synchronized team. The ship drifted closer, and Kai noticed a small pod detach from it. Nira leapt gracefully from the blanket onto the floor, her claws clicking softly. She hissed at the pod, which hovered near the station. Kai guided the drones to intercept, while Nira maintained her watch from near the blanket. Her presence alone seemed to keep the pod at bay. The pod finally moved away, its threat neutralized. Nira relaxed slightly but remained close to the blanket, circling it once before settling down. Kai approached her, gently stroking her soft fur. "You were amazing, Nira," he said softly. She tilted her head, letting out a small hum of satisfaction. Kai reflected on how far they had come together. Nira had arrived unexpectedly, and a simple blanket had become the center of their bond. It had started as comfort and warmth, but now it represented trust, understanding, and partnership. Every day, every small gesture had built a foundation stronger than he could have imagined. Later, Kai decided to spend time with Nira, strengthening their routines and connection. He helped her adjust the blanket, showing her new ways to arrange it safely for observation and rest. Nira followed his guidance but added her own touches, circling it and pressing her paws gently. It was clear she respected his presence, just as he respected her rituals. Kai watched her carefully. She had grown more confident, more expressive, and more trusting. The blanket was a symbol of safety, but also of their shared bond. It was a space where they both felt secure, where instincts, intelligence, and affection met. Kai realized that their connection had grown deeper than he could have imagined. As evening approached, the cabin glowed with soft light. Kai and Nira prepared for rest. He placed the blanket in her corner, letting her adjust it as she wished. She circled it 3 times, pressed her paws and nose against it, and then curled up comfortably. Kai lay beside her, careful not to disturb her. He reached over and stroked her fur gently. Nira leaned into his hand, humming softly. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the calm and trust she felt. Kai smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. Their bond had become unbreakable, a connection formed through care, patience, and shared experiences. Kai thought about the journey that had brought them here. Nira had traveled far, perhaps fleeing danger or seeking safety. He did not know her past, but he understood her now. Through the blanket, through her actions and gestures, she had taught him about trust, loyalty, and understanding. He had taught her about patience, security, and companionship. Together, they had formed a partnership. Suddenly, a small alert sounded from the sensors. Another object approached the station, slower this time. Kai checked the readings and realized it was harmless, a delivery pod from a nearby trade station. He smiled and turned to Nira. "Nothing to worry about," he said. She looked up, ears twitching, then relaxed again, pressing against the blanket. Kai realized how much Nira had taught him about observation and trust. Her instincts were sharp, her loyalty unwavering, and her intelligence remarkable. The blanket had been a starting point, but the bond they had formed was stronger than any simple object. It was built on respect, care, and mutual understanding. As night deepened, Kai and Nira rested together. The blanket, carefully arranged and gently nuzzled, remained at the center of their connection. It was a symbol of their shared trust, a marker of safety, and a reminder of the extraordinary bond between a human and an alien werewolf. Kai reflected on the days they had spent together. Nira had arrived unexpectedly, but she had transformed his life. A simple act of kindness, a shared blanket, had created a bond that neither time nor distance could weaken. He realized that companionship, understanding, and care could transcend worlds and species. He reached over and stroked her for one last time before closing his eyes. Nira hummed softly in response, curling closer to the blanket. Kai felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. They had faced danger, built routines, and shared experiences. The bond they had created was extraordinary, forged through trust, patience, and mutual care. Outside, the stars twinkled silently. Inside the cabin, warmth, understanding, and companionship filled the space. Kai and Nira rested, their connection unspoken but undeniable. The blanket, once a simple object, had become a foundation for trust and friendship, a symbol of their journey and the partnership they had built. Kai knew that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but he felt ready to face whatever came next. With Nira by his side, he had courage, companionship, and unwavering loyalty. Together, they had created a bond that would endure, built on simple gestures, shared experiences, and deep trust. And so, as the station floated silently among the stars, Kai and Nira slept peacefully. The blanket remained at the center of their connection, a symbol of trust, understanding, and the extraordinary friendship between human and alien werewolf. Their journey had begun with kindness, and it had grown into a partnership stronger than either could have imagined. The night passed quietly, and when morning came, Kai and Nira awoke together once more. The blanket, carefully arranged and lovingly tended, reminded them both of the bond they shared. It was more than warmth, it was trust, companionship, and the promise of shared adventures to come. In the vast expanse of space, two beings from different worlds had found connection, safety, and friendship. The blanket had been the beginning, but their bond had become something far greater, something unbreakable, something extraordinary. Kai reached out, and Nira pressed close, their trust and understanding evident in every movement. Together, they faced the galaxy, knowing that with care, loyalty, and shared experience, nothing could break the connection they had built.